So what does my Panerai Luminor, Universal's Geneve White Shadow, Casio Mission Impossible and Seiko Captain Willard all have in common? Well, these are all watches I used to dislike, thinking that they were either too big or just too strange looking, and therefore dismissing them as not my cup of tea. That was until I tried them in the metal to see what all the fuss was about. And today, I own 3 of the 4 just mentioned. So now it's time to see if I finally found the Willard I've been looking for. Look at that dial. Oh my God. Look at that dial. Okay, hi guys and welcome to the show. So let me just get the reference right because I can never remember these things. This is the SPB237. It came out in 2021. I must have just missed it. That is the only downside of refusing to to follow all the watch publications because it's all fake journalism. You miss out on releases like this, and none of the channels I follow, or at least I saw, reviewed it either. So periodically I go onto eBay and I'm always looking for a Willard, and I was looking at vintage auctions and this popped up and I was like, grey dial? When did that come out? I reached out to Moyer Fine Jewelers. They were kind enough to lend in this new one. Will I be pulling the trigger? Stay tuned. I think you guys might be in for a bit of a surprise, but I don't think it's going back. Oh yeah, and I'll do a quick wristwatch check. My Panerai, this is the Vecchio 40, back from servicing. Also, I sent it to Moyer Fine Jewelers. They did an outstanding job. Yeah, I don't really wear much else these days. Anyway, let's get into this. Gorgeous. For those who have missed it, a quick recap. I reviewed the Seiko Willard with that subdued green a few years ago, and it very much had a domino effect on my watch collecting journey. While it certainly has some issues, I never expected to enjoy such a notoriously large watch. The Marmite effect causing distinctive case being so comfortable in reality and packed with charm. It gave me the confidence to try a few more new things, and fast forward back to the future of today, and I own and enjoy watches I would never have expected. It's no secret I'm a movie fan too, but there's so much more to the Willard than its namesake. But now there's this grey Willard available in a slightly smaller size, because despite quite liking that olive green of before, it's not really a colour I wear too often or have in my collection. Now I'm going to save some time and skip the long ramble on how prestigious Seiko's history is as a brand and how they have innovated more than any other in horological history. I think we all know by now, and forgive the cringy unintended pun, but let's dive right into the nitty-gritty of it all. It's no secret that they were late to the diver watch game compared to the Swiss, famously entering the market with their first diver, the 62 Mass, in 1965. But with typical Seiko unrelenting fortitude, they soon caught up, quicker than a sailfish through calm waters, only to break records a decade later with their innovative titanium 600-meter quartz divers of the 1970s, the first Annie digital divers of the 80s, and then the world's earliest diving computers of the 1990s. The very first Captain Willard came out in 1968 with only 150 meters water resistance. Oh, and by the way, you can find this book on eBay. It is absolutely fantastic. The great thing is it is in Japanese, but the dates and the numbers are in English. So you really still get an idea of when things happened and with what watch. The first Willard 6105 introduced that super wide, instantly recognizable and uniquely curvaceous case, like a dive watch with too much BBL. Aside from its ergonomic advantages, relative affordability at the time, its robustness and ability not to snag on clothing or equipment, it made it perfect for troops serving in wet environments, like tropical war zones where standard issued field watches often failed.
We're going upriver about 75 clicks above the Dolong Bridge.
That's Cambodia, Captain.
That's classified.
Aside from being immortalized in Francis Ford Coppola's Capo Lavoro Apocalypse Now in 1979 by the wrist of Martin Sheen's character, from which it got its nickname, it was also the choice of Naomi Yamura, who wore it not as a brand ambassador but out of personal choice and necessity, requiring a waterproof and rugged watch during his daring expeditions. You see, by the time he was 29, he had successfully climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, Mont Blanc, the Matterhorn, Mount Everest, and just 3 months after that, summited Denali in Alaska, becoming the first person in the world to reach the tallest peaks of all 5 continents. And that is extremely impressive marketing that you just cannot manufacture. Even with these high prices, there's still misalignment issues with the bezel. Incredible, incredible. I guess it just wouldn't be a Seiko without it, right? So the reason why the Willard wears just so well is the lug-to-lug length. It's remarkably small for this particular diameter. In fact, funnily enough, bringing my Panerai, the Panerai has the same characteristics. That's when big watches wear smaller. I'll put all the dimensions on the screen. In terms of materials, well, we have a curved sapphire glass. It's actually curved on the top, but there's a step you can see right there before we get to that curve, which gives it some interesting distortions. There's AR coating on the inside. The stainless steel itself features a dia coating. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that. There's a circular brushing on the top that goes in almost a kind of concentric pattern, and then with the high polish, which is done very, very nice. Good transitions on this as well. Now the 6R35 is a wonderful movement, essentially an upgraded 6R15, but what they've done is boosted the power reserve to 70 hours, but without compromising the modularization like those awful Swatch Powermatics. Well, they're not awful, it's just I'm really not a fan of what they've done there with the regulation system. And you know, all the machine regulation. You can still regulate these yourself. It's got excellent bi-directional winding because of course you still have that magic lever system, and you'll see it's a bit of a kind of stagnated typical Seiko slower beat rate of 21,600 VPH. The benefit is there's less friction in the moving parts, so the longevity of these calibers is very, very impressive. I've seen 7S26s from the 90s that are still going strong to this day. Mainly due to that. If I unscrew the crown, we have 200 meters of water resistance, and I've pulled the crown out. You'll see it's hackable, and then on the first position you'll see we got quick set. The Lumi Bright on this is absolutely amazing because of the differentiation. We got great orientation with the markers, and we'll return to this later on because there's some really cool stuff going on with this dial. In terms of the bezel, there is a little bit of wiggle room. It feels like a tightened up SKX. So not the best in the world. It's 120 click, unidirectional of course. Something that I never noticed that the originals from the late 60s never had was the drilled lug holes. I'm quite surprised they did that considering how small these lugs are. In terms of the strap, we'll address that a little bit later. The most important aspect of this watch is the case design. Any YouTube video on the Willard without going into this is doing you an injustice. While Swiss brands like Doxa, Amiga, and a few others were already experimenting with cushion-shaped divers, it was Seiko who were the first to combine it with a 4 o'clock crown from their previous reference 6215 of 1967, but then crucially more exaggeratingly rounded in order to prevent snagging on diving equipment or diving suits. This in turn also helps guide the fingers into the position needed to manipulate the bezel, while also simultaneously protecting the screw-down crown. While crowns in this position were nothing new, with Squale founder Charles von Buren being the first to do so, Seiko did pioneer it in this uniquely asymmetrical cushion case configuration. Today we see it moved ever so closer to the 3 o'clock, which was from 1996 onwards to house the new 7S26 caliber that both the architecture of the 6R35 and 6R15 are derived from. The bezel took inspiration from the reference 6159, adding a triangle with dots for the minutes for the first time. Previously, the bezel markings were either just one or the other, but never combined. The dial is a confluence of elements found in the previous 3 generations of divers. While reverting back to the applied rectangular shapes of the 62 mass, on the Willard was the first to combine it with the 6215's double marker at 12. I can only speculate this return to straighter shapes was the watch designer cleverly contrasting those lovably excessive Jessica Rabbit curves of the case. The Willard also features one of, if not the most intelligently nifty designed seconds hands of all time, again taken from the 1967 reference 6215. We are of course talking about what is whimsically referred to the traffic light tip. The dash of cherry red is for instant legibility in daylight, then loomed in the adjacent section for when in low light. Very simple, but utterly pure genius. The bluntly tipped index style of the hour and minutes are now in a faceted brushed/polished mix. A really cool little bit of unexpected refinement. The dial itself is a distressed granite finish, almost linen-esque, with a vertical brushing that looks quite organic and not machine-made. They're certainly taking a leaf out of Brand Seiko's book there. Lastly, we have to mention this being a great example of faux tina, or faux patina, done right, with the luminescence in a subtle parchment or ivory off-white. Are you listening, Amiga? That's how you do faux tina. So the first big negative is definitely the value. Now, if you go to any inflation calculator online and work out the price, in 1968, records show the Willard sold for, I think, about $95. In today's money, that's around $830, give or take. And I can't take into account, what investment Seiko has done in terms of expenditure in infrastructure and all the rest of it, and research and development and those added costs. I think 900 to 1,000 is the actual realistic price for this. I think it is a little bit overpriced, especially considering for the same money you can now buy something Swiss like the Squale 1521, which is an even more prestigious Swiss-made, verging on entry-level luxury, iconic dive watch. But they have done quite a good job of, controlling and taking back the control of the grey market and returning to more retail prices. Or retail price adherence, which is what they've done. The lack of signed crown, I feel, is really lazy. If I do pull the trigger, I'll probably mod it out. I'll send it to my friend Jeff at Watchmakers 4. Shout out to him. And in fact, I would like the crown more like the original with a segmented knurling. I'll try and include a picture of the original. I just think it's a little bit more indicative of classic Seiko. This feels like they just took it off 5KX, which they probably did, and just bunged it on here to save money. Talking of saving money, they certainly didn't on the strap. I mean, I've been very vocal at criticizing the Alpinist. The straps were always an afterthought, even with the rubber straps and everything. This is certainly a departure. I mean, they've even branded it there. They call this braiding technique Seitu, I think that's how you pronounce it. But it's still a polyester material, just done incredibly well. The olive green, absolute genius, color matching. Anyone with half a decent sense of taste can see how it complements this color palette. Just screams the outdoors and military and everything, even signed hardware. Really, really nice. But for me, I prefer, I'll pull I'll pull this in. This is probably what I'll put it on for B-roll. You know, the waffle from Riscani Watch Club. I think this has to go on rubber, just to make it more more like the Captain Willard of the movie. Maybe I'll put the black one from my Panerai. I just think Riscani Watch Club does a really good job. I know Jeff McMahon, he wears it on a Tropic rubber strap, and I just think they absolutely work amazingly. And also lessens the height. With this, you got 2 layers there, and this is a thick strap as well. My last little criticism is that marker at the 3 next to the date throws off the balance of the dial. It's not congruent with the rest of the markers. It's unneeded. We already got great orientation with the kind of shield-like 12. I also think the date should have been framed like the original, but it just breaks the flow of the hash marks at the periphery. Bit of a shame there. Not the end of the world, but yeah, once you see it, you can't really unsee it, if that makes sense.
They told me that you had gone totally insane.
So this watch to me is more than just a diver. It reminds me to keep an open mind, to try something before you judge it, because I didn't expect to love the Willard so much. I always thought it was strange looking, but I get it, you know, it's the same thing with this and so many other watches. Also, there is an ulterior motive. I have to be truthful here. I see Jeff McMahon, ever articulate and philosophical, expressing his passion for his Seiko divers, and I feel like I'm missing out. It feels wrong not to have a Seiko diver in my collection. I started the year off with 4 Seiko watches. Now I'm down to 1, just the Flightmaster. So I think adding this back feels right. You know, I got something other than the Flighty to hashtag Seiko Saturday, which we started on this channel. I will make that pilgrimage to Japan eventually one day, so, you know, but that's Grand Seiko, possibly King Seiko territory. I think this will be welcome in the collection in the meantime. Seiko's title as King of the Divers under $1,000 may be in question, but it still gives me that warm, fuzzy, reassuring feeling the SKX first did, donkeys years ago, as it did for so many. As I get older, I find myself chasing those feelings of familiarity in collecting not just watches, but so many things, from rare best of the worst style obscure horror gems on Blu-ray, or Brian Ferry's music, too much time on Command & Conquer Remastered when I should be working and editing this video. But these kinds of obsession born of nostalgia don't ever leave us. In fact, I think they intensify the closer we actually get to the end of our life and further away from the beginning. We all have it manifested in various forms or mediums, and speaking of the SKX, I do miss it terribly. As part of my own watch collection purge, I am now down to just 1 Seiko watch. I know, I can't believe it myself. But most importantly, as with the SKX, the ISO qualifying standards haven't changed either. For those not familiar with the term, it basically brought authenticity and legitimacy to it, making it worthy of having divers on the dial in that lovable sci-fi retro font, and therefore a real dive watch respected by the pros. Today, it's accompanied by the Pro Specs X logo, which unfortunately has too much resemblance to the cesspit of wasted time and unneeded opinions that is Twitter. On a more profound level, the Willard acted as a foil to the antagonist of Apocalypse Now's watch of choice, who was symbolically wearing the Swiss-made Rolex, no less. Seiko's ultimate nemesis, and still very much is.
The American people may find it hard to believe that the U.S. is winning the war in Vietnam. How do they smell to you, soldier?
I think subconsciously a lot of us who love Seiko like that anti-establishmentarianism. The Willard, by all conventions, is inherently odd, bold, different, and doing its own thing, and so unashamedly. Just like the 3 other watches I currently own that I started this video with. And in the end, that is what makes it, in my opinion, so damn cool. So there we have it. I bid you farewell from the Urban Gentry War Room. Am I going to pull the trigger? I think so. I'm going to contact Derek and make the payment and add it to my own collection. I can't wait forever for the perfect Seiko diver. I don't think it will ever happen. You know, speaking of which is your favorite Seiko diver? Let me know your thoughts also on this in the comments. Don't forget to like this video. Very important indeed if you want to see more free and independent content like this. I will catch you in the next one. Onwards and upwards. Thank you for watching. Ciao.